Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. My name is Sam Shalhoub, and it's time for your special edition Daily Dispatch. So, we have Mike Netter with us today. Mike is a veteran of distribution, sales, and marketing. He has served in senior executive roles in multiple companies. He's now applying his business expertise to state politics to further the cause of conservatism here in the state of California. Mike also helped spearhead the effort to recall Gavin Newsom. Mike, welcome to the show.
Sam, it's a pleasure to be here today. As I always tell my doctor, it's way better to go in for a physical than an autopsy because we're still doing a physical on California and the country and not an autopsy yet.
Well, boy, there are some words of wisdom there, Mike. I was born and raised here in California in Los Angeles, and I cannot believe the changes I've seen over the last several decades. Give us an overview where you think we're at right now, where we're going, and what's going on.
I think the problem we have right now, and I preach this often when I public speak, to kind of give a breakdown of the state, yes, there's 10 million Democrats and 5.3 million Republicans, and 6.5 million NPPs are no party preference. But the really biggest party in California, and frankly in much of the country, is the party of apathy. It's those that don't give a damn. And part of the project we do that kind of we got out of the recall, if you will, I call it What Lies Beneath, is a marketing slash election integrity project. And let's go down that path a little bit so I can talk about it, if you will. Okay. So everybody's concerned about election integrity, and they should be, right? Because there's lots of things which take place. And a few years ago, when we started to look at this, everybody is, of course, concerned with the dead people, or as the Democrats call them, mortally challenged. And they're on the rolls, and sometimes votes get cast by a relative. But this actually led us down an interesting path where we started to take a look, and anybody out there who's watching this, check on Ballotpedia and you can see what I mean. The problem we have when we report voter turnout much of the time, it's top line voter turnout. When you look at Gavin Newsom, not too long, it's like the sun will hurt your eyes. When you look at Gavin Newsom's election for governor, you'll see last time about an aggregate 13.5 million votes. And then start to roll down to these other offices, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state. You could see that the aggregate, for those out there who not know what I mean, the total number of votes starts to drop off. Here's how sad it gets. When you get to state assembly and state senate, where each district in California, because we're a big state, BAS, right? I'll let you figure what the A is for. Um, there are about 252,000 possible votes, yet the aggregate total vote for many of these offices is 40 to 50,000. People don't vote downstream, and there's lots of reasons that they don't, but the reality is it's the party of apathy. And the Democrats or the left, as let's be specific here, has spent years building up institutions to play on the party of apathy, realizing there's a hard right, there's a very leftist left, and there's a bulk of people in the middle who really care less about abortion, less about thing else, but more about the price of hamburgers and gas. Now, the good news is, Sam, the real good news, like all leftist movements do, they've gone way too far. On my Twitter feed, at NetterMike, or X as Elon calls it, because when he got that much money, I guess all he gets money left for is one letter. It's just X. And so in X itself, when you follow me, it's fascinating. I'll put out what I think are really intelligent feeds or posts, as we call them now, on taxes and the depth of problems, 1,000, 2,000 likes. But let me tell you something. I put out one yesterday, for example, that the price of a double double has hit double digits. Yes, indeed. If you go to In-N-Out Burger now, you better be prepared to break out at least 11 to 12 bucks, more like 12 with tax. That really ticks off the public. And so the point is, all the leftist policies where people people aren't paying attention because it's the party of apathy. Those that don't bother to vote for these downstream offices are coming back to catch up to the Democrats because they basically made such a mess out of California when it comes to everyday life. Back to you, Sam.
Well, I agree, Mike. I often say in my show that it's gas stations and grocery stores that make a big difference. And it sounds that's a lot like what you're saying. Now, as far as election integrity, I had met with a gal, oh gosh, a few years ago. I think it was the Election Integrity Alliance. I don't remember for sure, but
There's
apparently they
lots
joined.
of them. Yes.
Yeah, but apparently they joined with the Judicial Watch to sue the state of California over the voter rolls. What do you know about that?
A lot. In fact, the analyst that's on our project, Larry, and I'll leave his last name blank, is actually the same analyst. It's a EIP, Election Integrity Project. And what they found, this is shocking, okay, that Los Angeles had allowed the voter rolls to build up. And we don't have that kind of time, Sam, to go that deep in it. But let me summarize it as this. The problem in California and in a lot of states is we have something called the Motor Voter Act, meaning when you go down to the DMV, okay, it's a national act to either get a driver's license or do whatever, you have the option of getting registered to vote. Technically, if you don't vote in two elections in a row, or let me be clear, if you die, which means you're probably not watching this unless it's from somewhere I don't have access to, but let's use death as an example because people understand death. You're supposed to be taken off the voter rolls. You're also supposed to have certain things certified about how you vote. Well, Los Angeles, which is run by Dean Logan, who, let's be really clear, Dean Logan has been a failure in Seattle. He's head of the Board of Registers. And this is a very important case. I'm glad you're asking me this because 1 out of 4 voters in California are registered in Los Angeles County. And Los Angeles County had let its voter rolls bloat, for lack of a better term, by an excess of about 1.8 million people. Now, I want to be clear. That doesn't mean that 1.8 million people of those voted. That means that the rolls themselves were bloated by 1.8 million that hadn't been properly vetted, is the best way to look at it. Now, God bless Judicial Watch, they sued and they got the 1.8 million taken off. Here's the challenge with many of these cases because the Democrats, who have a supermajority thanks to the party of apathy in California, continuously change the election code. They amend it. And so, although 1.8 million people were taken off the Los Angeles rolls, it's kind of like having your teeth cleaned. If you don't continue to get the plaque off, it builds back up again. And so that lawsuit, because it wasn't legally allowed, didn't have what's called a pure permanent cure. So guess what happened? They bloated again by about a million people. Now, again, that's Democrats, Republicans, and NPPs. But the problem in California is that we have a system that discourages, yes, you're hearing correctly, voter participation. It doesn't encourage voter participation. Here's a fascinating trivia fact for you, Sam. Since they went to all mail in ballots, which really just filled that gap in the last 30%, because once you were absentee about 10 years ago, the Democratic legislature or the left said, we're going to leave you permanent absentee. So they only filled the gap in on another 3.5 million and said we're mailing ballots to everybody. Now, Sam, this is an opportunity for you ask a question. How do you think that's working out, California?
How do you think that's working out, Mike?
Well, not well, because actually, since they've been mailing ballots to everybody, and we have a whole study on this, not yet for public consumption, voter participation has gone down. Yes, you're hearing correctly, voter participation has dropped. Apparently, it is very much a struggle for the average California who's concerned about hamburgers, price of groceries, and in Los Angeles, not getting shot. Which I just want to be clear there. I'm against people getting shot when it's me. So, and I know you had Ted Nugent on before, and I had Ted Nugent. I'm with him. It's all for shooting people, but Ted, it's not me. I prefer to be not be shot by someone. But it is LA. I feel I should get the disclaimer. But apparently, it's a lot of work for those people to even get from their couch to the mailbox. Let's be clear. Another problem with that is because we've made this voting season. Yes, indeed. It's not like the World Cup that takes place in one game. It's like the baseball and football season, or the football season, or any other that takes place over 2 months. So, because of that, and because you can vote almost anywhere, in fact, here's a great trivia fact, Sam. In Los Angeles, where again, Dean Logan is about as corrupt as anybody in history. In fact, there's a rumor going around, probably not true, that Bernie Madoff took lessons from him. They opened 900 pop-up stands. Yes, indeed, pop-up stands where people can go to vote. What could possibly go wrong? Well, a lot goes wrong. And unfortunately, the elections that it sways, or the cheating, if you will, that takes place, isn't at the top line. It's because as people go downstream and don't vote, many people don't even vote on the correct ballot. They don't know who their congressperson is. They don't know who their assembly person is. They don't know who their state senator is. So when they're presented with a ballot, especially when it comes to school board and water board, they're not sure they're even voting for the right people. So they either don't vote or may vote for an office that belongs in a different precinct. That's the challenge we have with elections today. And much of the challenge we have is that we, the right and the left, okay, pay attention to the shiny objects which are presented. Yes, there was a lot wrong with Donald Trump's election. Minnesota, Georgia, etc. However, in California, let's be real, it's just a matter of how the Republicans on a presidential basis today are probably going to get their posterior or beep kicked. All right. So there's a little variance of gap, but they don't have to cheat there. Okay. It's a pretty big gap. Everybody gets it. It's an electoral college, not meant to be a civics lesson today. But the reality is, much of this, and I have a saying, Sam, it doesn't matter whether it's inept or evil, the net effect's the same. Is it manslaughter or murder? Well, the dude's still dead on the sidewalk. Hey, it's not working out too well. So whether it's inept or evil, the problem is the election system that we have today, no voter ID, massive mail-in ballots, no verification, creates a lot of issues. And Sam, you seem to be a pretty bright guy. I'm going to give you that one. Okay. And I'm surrounded a lot of the times by fairly intelligent people. And I want to give everybody out there, when I talk to NEPT, don't attack your board of registers necessarily, because I want you to think of something. No one in the history of the United States or mankind has come out of a 4 year college with a degree in rocket science, law, political science, and come back to me, I'm a parent, and said, Dad, I'm glad I got that degree in aerospace engineering, but my real goal is to go work for the Board of Registers. That's really what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to sit there at a really boring job. So, by definition, what we have is we have people, not bad people. Let's just say not the brightest bricks in the pile, because that's by definition, fair enough, that are trying to do a bureaucratic job that much of the time are maneuvered by evil people and an evil system. So the net effect a long-winded answer to a very short question is that lawsuit did a lot to get people off the rolls. But right now in the United States, there are, I believe, 4 states. I could be off, I'm old, but let's roll with 4 that are challenging up in the federal courts mail-in ballots. And if they can challenge those mail-in ballots, it will have an effect for all the states. And then we'll be able to get more instituted that will help us have fairer and better elections. But the reality is, it's not, I repeat, not going to help us conquer the party of apathy. We have to get people to vote and vote on 100% of their ballot. Work out, go to the gym. I know the ballots are long, your arms get tired. Take a break, but make sure you mark all the boxes. And it's really good idea to, especially in California, not to mark them for the party in power. Because how's it working out for you? Not too well.
Right, right, Mike. Well, without getting into a much broader conversation in terms of very verifying voters, there's blockchain technology that may be used in the near future. I don't know how that's going to work out, but in the short term, there is a friend of mine in Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, that he produces a newsletter that kind of helps people understand who might be the best person to vote for. Is there anybody doing that here in the California and the Los Angeles area that you know of?
There's lots of newsletters. And in fact, Sam, that's a good lead in to tell you if you go to my X feed at Netter Mike, you will find in my pin feed, I have a newsletter myself, Netter
Right. I
News.
get your
Okay.
newsletter and it's very informative.
Okay, so the idea is yes, come election time, there's CRA, there's Craig Huey, there's lots of ways to go downstream and look at the judges. But the challenge we have, okay, is we have to get people engaged and for the right reasons. And I can't stress that enough. And I want to give you, well, I have a radio show called Raged. I don't know where I got the name, on Friday nights on KABC. And I always try to boil things down into kind of 4 issues because we have to understand one, the average public wanted to work at the Board of Registers. They're living their lives. They're trying to, and we, in many of these shows and the right, we want to show how bright we are and go deep on these issues. I want to lead you down a couple paths here, if I don't mind, to get people engaged and get them to vote. Sam, do you know anybody that doesn't like water?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, everybody likes water. California sucks at managing it. And right now in LA, thanks to the Metropolitan Water Board, what you pay for water is going up about 25%. That really ticks people off. Now, if you're watching the show right now, I'm going to go out on a limb. My apologies, and assume you're not Amish. And if you're not Amish, you probably like electricity. Okay, it powers the show, it makes my lights go on. And California pays the highest rate of electricity in the country, number 2 to Hawaii, actually, an average of 33 cents per kilowatt hour. We're not as cognizant of it because we don't pay for it at the gas station. But utility bills ramp people's dander up, and that's the fault of the state of California. It doesn't always matter why. We feel obligated to tell people, and a small group listens. But if you like water and you like power, you need to vote for change. Sam, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Do you own a tent company?
A what?
A tent company.
I
A
do not.
tent. Okay, then you're probably not for the homeless. Okay, because if you are, it's really a great business model. That protests I'm in. Okay, so most people don't own tent companies and they are against homelessness, especially when it spills out on the street. And as I referenced earlier, even the criminals are like, dude, I don't like getting shot. I'm pretty much against crime. Those 4 things, if we would boil our conversations out of that. That being said, I will maybe go deep a little bit if I have time today because you have a different crowd. Those are the things that will get people to break away, not from the Democrats, but the party of apathy. The master of giving these speeches, by the way, who I've met and seen a few times, is Donald Trump. Donald Trump simply hits it between the eyes and basically says, in effect, how is it working out for you? Make tailoring his speech per state and per crowd. That's what, in general, the conservative right, yes, we should not be changing Sally to Sam. We should not be doing a lot of things, absolutely. But we need to start with the things that everybody has a basic stake in. And to answer your question at the top of the show, okay, we are going to save California because the left is really a bunch of morons who's taken it too far. And they have big underlying reasons why they're doing it. And we could go into depth that a little bit. But to change that in this republic that we have today, we have to hit people between the eyes as to things that affect their everyday life. Back to you, Sam.
I couldn't agree more, Mike. And I think that's happening. This process, I've been in this fight for close to 4 decades, and I've seen more people wake up in the last 4 years than in the last 4 decades. So I think we're moving in the right direction. But I think you're right. There's a lot going on that has to be drawn out and brought attention to, part of which we've already discussed. But I want to pivot a little bit here now. That we have a situation in the White House where we all know who the two top runners are, President Trump and Biden, right? I'm not
I'm
convinced
not sure
that,
Biden knows, but close enough.
right, exactly. And I'm concerned that Biden is not going to make it to the election. And there's a lot of speculation out there as to who might replace him. There's been a lot of talk about Newsom replacing him. I want to talk a little bit about Newsom and some of the things that he's done here to show people around the country that he's not a good choice for the United States of America. Can you talk a little bit about Newsom and his possible run for presidency and what you could warn people around the country about
Well,
him?
the answer is absolutely. I didn't know you were allowed to cuss on your show using words like Newsom, but let's roll with that since you broke it open there. First off, Gavin Newsom is an awful governor. And let's get back to some of the basic reasons. If you're listening out there, how would you like to pay $2 more per gallon from gas? Look at your gas price if you're not in California and look up California's gas prices. And it is basically government mismanagement. And wait, there's more. It's going up again July 1st, and in less than a year, it's going to go up, in case you didn't know this, Sam, about another 50 cents a gallon because the government is adding a cap and trade to without going too deep. Let's talk about homelessness a bit, one of the subjects that we just discussed. Okay. The last 3 years, California has spent 24 billion. And I want to be clear on something for everybody out there. We become immune to these figures. Okay. $1 million is a lot of money. Most of you watching this show, myself, Sam, everybody else, if I gave you $1 million today, that would be a good day. Okay. We toss millions around in government like they're chump change. And now we go to billions. The federal deficit is 35 trillion with a T. So let's be clear. The last 3.5 years, I have a deal for you, by the way, if you're out there. If Gavin Newsom has something he'd like you to invest in, he does it through our taxes. How would you like to invest 24 billion in a specific issue, company, or problem, and then find out 3 years later it's gotten worse? Well, that's
Or that you can't
homelessness.
even account for where the money went or how to track whether it was effective or not.
Correct. Yet you have no idea where the 24 billion went. And worse yet, the problem of homelessness continues to rise, which also means that the quality of life for the average person continues to deteriorate. And wait, there's more. Around the country, if you're looking for a job, don't come to California. Because you'll find, oddly enough, they talk about the jobs report, right? Do you notice Biden's jobs report that
You
just
mean
came
the one
out?
that they revise every time after they release it? That one?
But even when they revise it, do you notice who the top two employers are, top two employment sectors the last year, Sam? Have you noticed that?
Government.
Correct. Government and healthcare, which is healthcare sponsored by government. Okay. So the economy really isn't growing, just the government itself is growing. But let's put that aside 1 second. If you happen to be in Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, or anywhere else listening to the show, the unemployment rate now in the United States is about 4.0. It's about 2 points higher in California. So California right now under Gavin Newsom is experiencing a much higher unemployment rate than the rest of the country. But Sam, as they say on late night TV, wait, there's more. Yes, indeed. Gavin isn't just satisfied in crushing the soul by not letting you get a job. Okay? He's gone a little bit deeper. And he's gone a little bit deeper in the fact that he likes to bang on Texas and Florida. Texas and Florida, I would like to point out, operating at a break even. In fact, Texas is enjoying this year about a 30 billion, that's with a B, Sam, surplus. California, the biggest state in the country, this year, and no one's quite sure. Gavin is trying to solve the budget problem in California. I'll get to that in 1 second. But the Office of Legislative Accounting folks, I'll just put it that way, legislative analyst said, looks like we're going to have this year about a 48, that's billion with a B deficit. Okay, that means we're short about $48 billion. But wait, there's more. Gavin Newsom, and they're fighting over the budget right now. If you want to talk about somebody, they certainly shouldn't be in charge of the country, no less the state of California. He's apparently trying to solve the budget problem with a very sophisticated accounting measure. Do you know what that's called, Sam?
I do not.
Whiteout. Because apparently he thinks he can just change the figure. He changed it, said, well, it's really only about 30 billion. And the Independent Office of Legislative Accountants, Legislative Office Analysts, correctly, LAO, said, no. We're pretty sure, Gavin, because we watch the money coming in and the money that you're spending, and it is indeed about 45 billion. So Gavin's scrambling right now. Now, if you want to wonder how the country can get in worse of a mess, let me give you a little history of Gavin's budget. You ready, Sam?
And
When Gavin Newsom came into office, the state budget of California was about 206 billion with a B. Pretty enormous. Okay, one of the largest budgets in the country. In just 6 short years, yes, indeed, it's been 6, Gavin and the Democratic cronies have grown that budget to over 310 billion. They're hoping to come in with rather svelte 293 billion this year, but really think about it, in 6 short years, some under the Trump administration, quite honestly, when inflation wasn't that high, they managed to balloon the budget by about 30% in the largest state of the union. And one of the creative ways they've done that, of course, Sam, is by giving free healthcare to illegal aliens. Yes, indeed. By the way, I would like to state I'm a older male than most, and you'll look at me and you'll probably guess but roll with me. I'm over 30, and I don't get free healthcare in California. However, my new retirement plan, which I'm announcing today, Sam, is literally to go across the border, leave my passport at home, and come back over and declare asylum from California. They're going to have to let me in, give me free health care, and all the other goodies that come with it. So if you want to know why Gavin's a bad governor, I've just touched the surface. Okay. That's not counting the fact that why we're in a deficit situation, which looks like it'll go on for at least 3 years. Okay. He's inviting, and Sam, any of your friends out there, if you would like to get a free sex change, and if you say, why would I want to do that? Hell, we'll change you back in California. Hell, if you're a guy and you're lonely, just declare you're a woman, we'll put you in a woman's prison. Come to California. And by the way, if you're worried about birth control and can't afford it, don't worry. Come to California. we'll give you a free abortion. Don't like your life in Colombia? Tired of living in that five-star hotel in New York? Come to California. We'll actually maybe even increase the benefits that they give you in New York City. Of course, there's a cost to all this, but the cost isn't to you coming out here. The cost is we actually kick, yes, you're hearing correctly, homeless veterans and other people out of shelters that are American citizens and maybe have fought to preserve my freedom to spout off on this show today so we can put other people that don't belong here in these shelters that are paid for, by the way, with your tax dollars. So, if you want to know why Gavin Newsom shouldn't be president, I would challenge you to look and say, give me one thing that's going right in California. Now, you might say the environment because it's a beautiful state. However, as I reported yesterday, and that story's getting buried a bit, too deep to go here, to put up a solar farm panel in Kern County, we're cutting down 4,000 Joshua trees. Yes, indeed, we don't really care about the environment because it's about money and power. And if you're worried about what's going to happen to the nation in the future, Gavin Newsom has a direct link to China. And that's one of the rabbit holes I'd like to go down a little bit here in the time I have left.
Well, I agree. I mean, Xi Jinping came out and met with Gavin Newsom personally. How much more obvious does it have to be? I agree with you.
It's a little more obvious than you think it is. I'm going to be honest with you, Sam. I had a horrible experience Sunday night, and you can tell I'm barely recovering from it. I don't normally talk about this, but I watched 60 Minutes. Okay. It was mind numbing, but it's something I feel I must do every once in a while to remind myself why I have to keep the fight up. Okay. Now, unlike alcohol and drugs, I've discovered I don't have to go to rehab. I can recover from this experience by simply turning off the television. So recovery is relatively quick while I'm here today. But they
That's
did have an
actually the solution to a lot of problems, Mike.
it, absolutely. That's right. Cut the cord before you slit your throat, as they say. So, by the way, that's facetious, not a recommendation. Um, it's interesting because they had a segment on China, and I want to put some things together for you. Okay. Because again, we have relatively short memories. There are some things China is really good at. Okay. They're really good. Everyone knows this at making solar panels. That's where the bulk of our solar panels come from. They're really good at making those big spinning vanes for the windmills that they say are so environmentally correct. They're really good at making electric cars because the government subsidizes them. And just so you're aware, do you know remember who the company BYD is, Sam?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, you should. And I want to remind you of this. BYD is the largest auto manufacturer of electric cars in China.
Hmm.
They also happen to be known because during COVID, when Gavin was shutting down California, you might remember he decided to buy masks from an auto parts manufacturer. Remember that? He cut
Yes.
a billion because I understand, Gavin, and if you're listening to this, I appreciate it that no Californian, in your opinion, is apparently smart enough to put strings on cloth, so you had to buy them from China. I get it. Okay. Looking at me, talking to me, I have trouble in arts and crafts. I get it. But you would think he'd find other Californians. That $1 billion order got botched. Everybody knows it. That company was, guess who, Sam?
BYD?
Boom. A box of Snickers to you, -2 because I like them, was BYD. When Gavin Newsom went over to China and toured an auto factory recently, guess whose auto factory he toured?
BYD. Let me
You're
take a
catching
wild guess.
on. Now, here's what's also interesting watching in the 60 Minutes segments. California, and I often wondered why they did this. So, we're going to ban gas powered cars. We're the biggest state in the union. We're banning the sale of new gas powered cars by what year, Sam?
30?
2035.
35.
Okay. We're also banning lots of other things by 2030 and 2035. By the way, including steam powered and other locomotives for electric locomotives, which they don't even make yet. So good luck getting around. Don't
Not to
take the
mention
bus.
the draw on our electric grid
Oh,
that's
not to
third
mention
world.
it. I'm getting there. Stick with me here as I
Okay.
put this together. Okay. Yes. Now, I mentioned what China's good at. Let me tell you something China incredibly sucks at, and that's producing oil. They're the fourth largest oil producer in the world. Big country, fair enough. But they happen to be the second biggest consumer. The US is number one, meaning there is a large gap between the amount of oil that China consumes and the amount it produces. So they buy a lot of oil from the US. Fair enough?
Yes.
Now, President Xi, who met with Gavin Newsom, has announced publicly that he wants to surpass the US economy, kick our proverbial posterior by guess what year, Sam?
Tell me, Mike.
2035. Isn't that rather odd that as Gavin Newsom pimps going all electric, windmills and solar panels for electric cars by the year 2035, it completely coincides with the Chinese goal of kicking the Americans' posterior in the same year. And if you want to take, some call it a conspiracy theory, but as they say about paranoia, you're not paranoid if you know that they're after you. And they've announced this, okay? That they would much rather the US use a lot less oil and gas because if we don't export it, it hurts our economy. We sell it to China cheaper, who is short of oil and gas. You see where this is going? And make us go all electric with funny little windmills and solar panels that China has produced. Okay. And Gavin Newsom is leading the charge. And I started this off for everybody out there to really understand how important this election is and why not to vote somebody like Gavin. I don't care if it's Gavin, Biden, Kamala Harris, or who it is, why you can't vote for these people that are hung up on what they brought us the narrative of climate change. They're building institutions. They built this institution against nuclear power many years ago. Remember that? We tore down all the nuclear power plants. We now keep a few open in the US because everybody likes electricity except for the Amish. It takes 20 to 30 years to rebuild these plants, to make a change in institutions when we do it. So, although some of you today may go, hey man, I'm Democratic, I'm a rich liberal, it's going pretty well for me, I don't really give a rodent's posterior. You can fill in what that means because I'm going to vote liberal. I got it going good for me. Let me fill you in on something. The institutions that you, the limousine liberals, have helped build, we need to make sure they don't grow anymore and tear them down fairly quickly. Because the scenario I just gave you, if you wake up in the year 2035 and find that BYD, even with a tariff, I forgot to throw this in, their car cost a third of what a Tesla does, a GM electric vehicle. Got it? You could say, well, we got really big tariffs. No, they make a car for 10 grand in American cash, throw a 50% tariff on it, it's still going to be 15, 17,000 out the door. And by the way, in the banning of new gas powered cars in 2035 means 5, 10 years after that, when your car breaks down, or if you're like me and hit things occasionally and need to get a new car, please, no accident lawyers call me. I'm good. Um, they're going to phase out cars and crush American manufacturing, and it's going to take a while to rebuild this. And a great example of this happening today is what's happening with the semiconductor chip. However, the semiconductor chip, as important as it is, running the computers and your ever precious cell phone, are nowhere near as important to American life as things like electricity and transportation. and fuel. And that's the fact that people like Gavin Newsom, whether it's inept or evil, I don't think Gavin's sitting there plotting. I think he's a moron. Gavin Newsom, by his own admission, can't read. You know that, right? He has dyslexia. So I want you to really think about something. Unlike people like Ronald Reagan, who read and gathered their own thoughts, then got advisors around him, Gavin gets most of his information from people telling him stuff, not from reading and drawing his own conclusions. So really think about that. So if you want a president in the White House that is closely aligned with what is indeed America's biggest enemy, we grew up with Russia. Sam, China's the number 2 economy in the world. Do you know what the Russian economy ranks?
Well, I know they've come up significantly in the last few years.
They're number 11. They have about a 1.7 trillion with a T annual GDP. Pretty small. It's not that big. That's why he needs to take other countries. Yeah, they've come up because they sell a lot of oil and gas. They're about the number 1, right?
Well, I
My
think it
point,
has. I agree with you, Mike, for the most part, but it also has to do with the monetary system and the things that they're doing to withdraw from the SWIFT system, to be part of the BRICS association, and so forth. But go ahead with your conclusion.
well, it's a circulatory effect of money, but the bottom line is they're number 11, China's number 2. Got it? We grew up with Russia being the big power because they have bigger bombs. China is the main thing that we have. We need China. China needs us. Nobody wants to blow up the planet. Russia's the number 11 economy. We're at the number 2 economy looking to crush us. And Gavin Newsom, to answer your question, is giving him a gateway through his policies to let that happen nationally, which nobody in their right mind wants to see the US be number 2 in anything.
I agree, Mike. And I think that's a great way to end the show. I was concerned that there wasn't enough people aware of Gavin Newsom's background. And I have listeners all over the country. So thank you for expounding on that and making it very clear to what most people here in California already know, that he would not be a good choice. So,
Got to end with a pitch, Sam. You know that.
well, yeah, I not only want you to end with a pitch, Mike, but I also want you to let viewers know where they can find you, how they can get part of your newsletter, and so forth.
Lead in. Sam, I'm glad you asked that question. Rebuild California grew out of the recall of Gavin Newsom. We are a political PAC. You can go to rebuildcalifornia.com. For everyone out there, I want it to be real clear. You don't want policies of California affecting you and coming to a state near you. You simply don't. Highest taxes, highest homelessness, high crime rate. Nothing works well in California. I would ask, if you can, go to rebuildcalifornia.com, donate a little bit to us, $10, $20, more if you got it. Gavin, if you're listening, we'll take some of that missing billions. Help us fight back in California, not just against Gavin Newsom for president, but remember our really great export to the White House, Kamala Harris. We got more coming. We export really bad politicians. California's really good at that, and they're coming for you. Rebuild California. On Facebook, we have close to 72 groups, 1 per county. If you know somebody in that county, join that group at Rebuild California. You can go to LinkedIn if you have a job and follow me at Mike Netter. It's the forgotten social media, and it's a really good way for people that have jobs and want to talk about how bad policies in California. That's where I put a lot. Follow me on X at NetterMike, where you could subscribe to my newsletter. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your economic status is. The newsletter is free, and you have that kind of money. At NetterMike on X. And one final thing I want to tell you. It's up to you. No one's really coming to save you. You might think that they are, But in this nation where we're made up of individuals, I don't know what your precipitating event was. Mine, I haven't been in politics as long as Sam, was about 3 years ago when I looked around and realized many people aren't doing anything. Whether you donate, whether you join the conversation, or you simply pay attention by going to Rebuild California or following me or watching this show right now. You can make a difference. Politics is like religion. If you spread the word, you can save the nation. And it's up to you. I challenge each of you out there every day, each week to do one little thing to help bring balance and sanity back to the United States of America. Because it's up to you. No one is coming to save you, but you in this great nation of ours have the ability to save yourself. RebuildCalifornia.com. I'm also on KABC Radio, Friday night, 7 to 8. The show's called Outraged. Get mad with us and do something about it.
Very well stated, Mike. And as General Mike Flynn says, local action produces national change. So I agree with you. Mike, I sure hope that I can have you back on the show soon. We didn't get to half of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I know your time is limited. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we can do it again soon.
It's a pleasure, and I look forward to it, Sam. In the meantime, everyone out there have a great day. And as George Carlin would say, if you don't, it's not my fault.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon.